Everybody, I think we'll get going, but we look at a little bit like today in terms of members. I've got a message from Mark Weston, who I assume is standing in for Richard today, saying he's going to be a bit late, but I don't know if
Jerome's on his way.
Jerome's on his way.
Okay. Excuse me.
Yeah, well, we'll get going because it's 10 o'clock. So yeah, welcome everybody, and we'll start the meeting. What we'll start with is just a round of introductions, because there's quite a few new faces in the room today, isn't there? So I'll start with myself. So I'm Councillor Kaida, Chair of the HR Committee, and I'll just go round to my right.
Matt Palmer, HR Business Partner.
Mark Jefferson, Digital HR Manager.
James Burrison, also from HR. We're not overstaffed.
Steph Griffin, Director of Workforce and Challenge.
Kusinara Jones, Legal Services.
Councillor David Walcott from Lot, please.
Paula Charlie, Unison Branch House. No, not Branch House, I said Jobs, but also Branch Secretary, which is why I'm here today. I was giving myself that.
Christina Tchaikovsky-Crouch, Head of Corporate Health Safety and Wellbeing.
And as I'm Derek Boyd, member of the public.
Kerry Bells, Hartcliffe Billywood.
Hello, my name is Paula O'Rourke, I'm Councillor in Clifton.
Councillor Joss Clark, Bristol West.
I am Sally Duke-Pruitt, I'm the Learning and Organisation Development Manager.
Magdalena Burr, Democratic Services Officer.
I'm Lauren Price, Democratic Services Officer.
Councillor Zoe Pete, Edward Matthew Lawrence Westernwood.
Right, well, welcome everybody. Safety information, I don't think we're expecting a fire alarm, are we, today?
No.
No, so that's good. So if it does go off, we will know that we meet up just in front of the cathedral. It's the assembly point. So we
This is crazy.
just
This room is far too small. I mean, this is absolutely bonkers.
yeah,
You've
well,
got all these rooms down the corridor.
are they empty or?
Yeah, yes they are.
They've got bookings starting midway through this meeting, so I can't book the room, unfortunately, but I'm going to still give it a so I'm
Sorry,
out.
Steph.
I would just say some officers are here for just particular items, so I think they will then leave after their item, which will give us a bit of breathing space, if that's helpful.
Yeah, okay, yeah, Joss, I get what you're saying, but we'll bear with it, yeah. Normally we wouldn't be in this room, so get what you're saying. I'll just let everyone settle down.
Perhaps we ought to use the chamber.
Yeah, well, it's becoming a more popular committee, isn't it, the HR committee, so use the chamber. But yeah, apologies about that. I wasn't aware of this room until like this morning, really, so.
I've never been in this part of the building.
There we are, that's a learning curve, so everyone there.
Right, so thanks, everyone settled down now. Apologies for absence. See, I didn't know Richard couldn't be here. I just got a text message from Mark standing in for him. I don't think there's any other apologies I've received. No, we're all here now, aren't we? Okay. Is there any declarations of interest from anybody today? No? Okay. So we'll move on to the minutes. Has anybody got any issues with the minutes? I'll just give everyone a moment to sort of look at them. Anything that needs to be corrected? Are we happy to agree those minutes then? Thank you. So what we've got now is public forum. So we've got one item of public forum today from Dan Ackroyd, which is a question. Have you received the written response, Dan?
I have indeed.
Okay. So if you just want to outline your question and
My original question.
yeah, just so everyone is aware of it.
Okay, so my original question was related to the sickness trends chart and what looked like a difference between the chart being shown this year and the chart being shown last year for data quite a long way in the past.
Okay. So the response to that was that there's been no change in methodology for sickness absent data presented. The data exists in a live system which is subject to constant change. The overall number of council employees has gradually increased recently, giving a higher denominator. Please also note that when an employee leaves the council, any sickness absence that they have is removed from the calculation, which means in effect that only the sickness absent of those who are currently employed by the council is included.
Yes.
Do you have a supplementary to that?
I don't understand the question,
No.
the answer, or possibly it sounds like a really odd, really odd choice to make. For a chart showing sickness trends over historical time periods, I would have expected like a flat line to represent a flat rate. But if you're throwing away the data for people who left the organisation, that's not going to be the case. That a constant trend would actually not be a straight line.
Okay. Okay.
Is
So-
that a deliberate choice to use that method, or is that something that probably needs to be looked at? I guess.
I can see where you're coming from. So obviously the basic answer is it's a live source of data. We only look at current employees, and obviously that gives a particular outlook on a set of data. But your question is basically, if you're not including the historical absence, how can you justify that average rate being valid? So I guess that is a little bit of a challenge back to us. I don't know if you want to say anything on that, James, at all.
I would say that we need to treat the denominator and the numerator in the same way. So the numerator is all sickness absence recorded for those who are currently employed, and the denominator is the average at the beginning and end of that 12-month rolling period of those employees who are in post. So if we included, it is, using a live system is very different to using a historical point in time system. We were, before we had the systems that we now have, using a historical point in time system. So it was very much, at that date, that's what we reported, and that would not change. We've moved towards a live system. One of the disbenefits is, that it appears to rewrite history.
Okay. So, Stephanie.
Just to add to that though, that sickness data as it was and reported last year will have been reported through various performance indicators, so we have a record of that data at that time. I think what we're bringing you today is a snapshot into our live system, which, as James explained, does then change those, the denominator and the numerator to give that slightly different picture of the history, simply because we've got different levels of employees now than we did then.
Okay.
Just a quick question, is the decision to monitor only current employees related to GDPR?
No.
Okay.
So if the employees have left, they're off the system, so therefore their data is just not included.
I just want to make sure that I understand what he's saying, because I don't think you do either. We're quite looking at each other. So if you had a person or several people that were off sick quite a lot for whatever reason, and then they left, let's say because they could no longer do the job because of their health, and then you re-employ somebody that is healthy enough and can do the job, the live data shows that, but the person who's left, that data will then go into a different graph. It'll be found somewhere, so it's not completely thrown away. It's just used somewhere else.
Absolutely not. Yes, there is no throwing away of any data. There is a large pool of data, and the live system pulls certain parts of that to present that picture. The data is all there. There is no.
It's just put somewhere else.
Okay. So this is just the information from the live system, isn't it? Hence the question. But there is other data behind it. which I guess from your question you probably want to see that, don't you?
Chair, could I
Yeah.
just add?
Yeah.
So, the whole premise of the HR dashboard is to enable us as an authority and HR as a service to support those managers and those teams with sickness absence across the council. And that's part of the reason for that, having that live data of that currently absent individuals so that we can help better manage those cases. So that's kind of where that trend indicator is to help us have an understanding of where that absence is within that 12-month window, and that's showing that trend of those live absences.
I think I've got a second supplementary, so I'll work it into this.
Yeah, go on.
I think that's my point, is that I looked at the chart presented to the committee this year, and the data in it is quite significantly different to my understanding of the underlying reality of the situation. Just because the graph because it's not straight, or it wouldn't be straight in a perfect situation, constant situation, because of event. I think the graph actually gives a misleading effect to the information that's presented, specifically for the long-term data, as opposed to the current what's going on. So I can see why, yes, you might want the current data to just go at the business currently, but this committee does need to be able to look at the reports that purport to show the past X years data and know that that data is actually what it was for those years, not a slowly changes.
Okay.
Set values.
Right, thanks for that. I'll let David come in, Councillor Wilcox, and then we'll move on, because I didn't really want this to become a debate.
Thank you, Chair. I think part of the problem is that the actual sickness trends graph that Dan is referring to isn't actually published on the council website. It's not part of the February 2024 HR papers, but it is presented to that meeting, which is why Dan has a screenshot as opposed to an actual document that you can refer to. Can we have that document actually republished, please?
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, and we're very happy to pull out the data that we had last year and present that to committee. We can send that around after, just for transparency.
Okay, thanks. Mark, did you want to say something?
Thank you. So the report was, I think, we shared with Democratic Services, I think, after the meeting, but we can reshare that, that's not a problem. I think, so the benefit of that, having that live system, is that it's more accurate data, if anything, now than it ever was. So it's more accurate in terms of, because we will constantly be making adjustments to work patterns within the structure. But also the point at which you're taking that average of the headcount for the denominator, you need to look at it at the start and the end of that period. So there will be a difference there once you get to that end period.
I understand your position. I disagree with quite
Okay.
strongly with other bit.
Okay, yeah, no, well, thanks for your question anyway, Dan. We'll take on board the points you raised, but rest assured that the information you would like to see is available, so we'll make sure that's available. So thanks for that. So that was the only public forum we had today. Next item on the agenda is trade union forum. We didn't receive any formal trade union forum this time, but I imagine you might hear some things on later items. So yeah, thanks for that. So we'll move on to item 7, which is the HR action sheet. See if we can pull that up. So we've got public forum there, item 1. What was that?
That was some public forum that was received, I think, after the deadline. So
okay,
we
yeah.
Undertook to send a written update to that after the meeting, which has been completed.
to the trade union forum. Obviously that was related to issues around Sandy Park, wasn't it? And we've got an update today, so we can move on to that. And then the second trade union forum item.
Is that item number 6 on the list?
Item 3. Action 3.
Yes, so that was for me to update the HR committee with the actions being taken in relation to Sandy Park,
And
which I
that
did
was done, yeah.
within a few days of the meeting, and then again in January.
Thanks. And 4, recruitment and retention.
Occupational health communications, yes, that's been actioned by James, so we did some internal communications around that.
And then 5, pay policy, that was up, that was,
Yeah.
an appendix was added to the report
So
this year on agency.
yes, and there was a request of the committee to just add a bit more clarity about the difference between interim and agency workers, so that was updated to the report before it went on to the full council last week.
And then 6,
That was a request of the trade unions to just recirculate some communication around recruitment, which I did straight after the meeting.
okay, lovely. Any questions from anybody else on that at all?
Obviously, it's worth noting,
Yeah.
it was all unanimously agreed to pay policy for the first time in about 30 years.
Yeah.
That's good.
First time it wasn't debated as well,
Yeah.
Sean.
Yeah.
You need to speak to your whip.
Never mind. Okay, right, thanks everyone. So we'll move on to the first item, which is got a general health and safety update, but I think this is more focused to begin with anyway on the issues at Sandy Park that we've discussed previously, and I think Tom, you've come along to give us an update today. So I don't know if you want to begin, and then I think there's sort of a general update, isn't there, around some of the new systems we've introduced recently. So I don't know if you want to speak to that after Tom and Christine as well. So over to you, Tom.
Okay, thank you everybody. I'm Tom Hedges, I'm the head of corporate landlord. Sorry for my slightly husky voice today. I joined back in July. I'm a chartered surveyor, also I hold a NEBOSH and general certificate in health and safety. And I'm here just to give you an update on the Sandy Park progress with the recent works that took place, particularly with regards to the history of the site as well. So Lawn Stewart, our subcontractors, our hard FM contractors, have worked with their supply chain on this project. We've spent about £43,000 recently on this improvement works. We took what I would call sort of a belt and braces approach with, obviously we're doing the roof repairs and then subsequently some ceiling repairs underneath. And my approach to this is to make sure that the risk assessment, method statements and the safe systems of work are appropriate for the task. So in this instance we had a man-safe harness system with the individuals working on this project. We had netting put underneath, so if anyone or anything was to fall, that would catch. And then also, as a third measure, we also had a scaffold tower sort of sat underneath every area where we worked. So where we were working, we'd move the tower around to make sure there were 3 methods of supporting and catching people and making sure everyone was safe. Rob Davis is our surveyor who's been overseeing the project and is satisfied with the work. The skylight panels have been replaced and have significantly improved the lighting below into the workshop. So this has obviously improved the natural light, which has again improved the working conditions for staff inside. Because obviously transparent panels, skylights can, over time, they can suffer sun and weather damage and become more opaque. So actually, the work has been done for a couple of reasons, but also it's improving the actual conditions beneath as well. As a team, we're happy with the quality of the work and the contractor's approach, but also very importantly, the attitude of the contractor as well. They took this task very seriously with considering the history of the site, and that was something that I was quite pleased to see. So the works to the roof are now completed. The fleet office ceiling tiles have been completed now on the underside, and then also the ceiling tiles in the A-shed have been commenced and should be finished this week. And then there's some further masonry works and some gutter cleaning and some lead flashing work being done as well on various areas of the site. We've also spotted other items around the site through our premise collaboration meetings that we now run and I chair. For example, simple things like installing evac chairs to help certain colleagues evacuate the building should they need. So by being more involved in these sites, we're finding we can pick up more challenges as we go. So I think it's a good thing for us to be going to site, spotting issues, and then highlighting them, then solving them. So it's a very, very pragmatic approach. We've been working very closely with health and safety colleagues, in particular Simon Hayward and Christina, on this, and their support and advice has been very helpful, so thank you, Christina. And as we advance the corporate landlord approach to managing our estates and assets, it's worth also noting we've now got greater presence on site with facilities management and property professionals, in particular an FM coordinator at Sandy Park. And this, for me, this improves the roles and responsibilities and also the accountability. It's also worth mentioning we have the Building Premise Health and Safety Board, which also helps to feed in and raise issues and concerns. And obviously the objective there is that you raise issues before they become an issue, so you can spot things in advance of accidents and things happening. So a couple of points just to finish on before we go to any questions. It's also worth mentioning about communication. I think communication has been really important here. The next communication update will come from Gary Goodwin, the Building Practice Manager, before the end of this week. And I'd just like to finish by saying thank you to everyone for their patience on this matter, including the trade unions and colleagues based on site, and we remain committed to improving the working environment for our colleagues and working in a safe manner. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Any questions? I've got Joe. Anybody else? Joe.
Thanks very much, Chair. So it was very helpful. Thank you, Tom. That was very useful. And also, I'm sorry that I was so slow in replying to Steph's kind of report back on Sandy Park. I think what I'm really keen that we do as much as possible with Sandy Park is feel that we've got a systematic safety management system in place, and at the moment it feels like there's lots of good actions, but it feels like they're slightly fragmented. So the things that I would kind of pick up on that I think are still outstanding from the dialogue with Steph is, health and safety risk assessments. What's the frequency at which they're taking place, and what are the actions? And an overview of of what you might consider to be all the different elements of a good safety management system. So I would expect to see something like a spreadsheet that says health and safety risk assessment in place and up to date, fire risk assessment in place and up to date, training. I mean, Rob Butler mentioned equalities training last time. Yes, this training is up to date, and this policies, evacuation policy, is that in place and up to date, so that you're looking at one spreadsheet, which is a management overview, and you're running it on a red, amber, green basis, so that you can see where we've got the elements in place and where things are still outstanding. I just want to pick up this issue around actions, because at the moment it feels like actions are almost being cut and pasted manually out of different risk assessments. What would be really helpful to know is that we've got a kind of an IT system which can pipe these actions out, so that you're looking at a set of actions, and then you're able to say, right, these are the 250 actions for Sandy Park across all our different risk assessments, training, gap analyses, and then you can kind of prioritise and group these actions so that you're able to deal with things in a systematic way. We don't need to have the trade unions saying, we've got to have a meeting about this, when actually if somebody followed up rigorously on the actions, then one place to look for everything. Yeah, one place to look for everything, really. And we need to know that our systems can do that. So I know from sitting on the housing committee that there is a kind of IT system that's been created that will really help with that. But we need to be really useful to know how that's going to integrate with what's happening here.
Thanks, Joan. I don't know if you want to respond to that.
Yeah,
do we have something like that at least?
Yeah, so our management system we use is HSG 65, which is what the HSC would recommend for a complex organisation of the service. The reason we don't put all of the risk assessments onto one spreadsheet is because as an organisation and the HSE would recognise that, it's that we're far too complex to be able to do that. What we do is those risks that are of a health and safety nature that are of a high will go onto the Cantana risk assessment, risk management system, and that will make its way up to DMTs, will make its way up to corporate leadership board, and it will be monitored in that way. If we go back to the health and safety policy, managers are responsible for managing health and safety and their risk assessments, quite rightly so. We have recently reviewed the online risk assessment form to make it easier for managers to do that and to actually record their actions. We don't have a IT system for the organisation which would bring all of that together. Yeah, in an ideal world that would be great. We also have CASMS, which is the monitoring system that we use once a year for health and safety. And risk assessment is captured on that to see whether risk assessments are captured, whether the right interventions are in place. Out of CASMS, particularly this year, the corporate health and safety team are currently just about to take an audit to see whether risk assessments across the organisation, so we'll be looking at every head of service, and we'll be undertaking 90% of all risk assessments in terms of auditing as part of our Plan Do Check Act, to see whether those risk assessments are suitable and sufficient, whether interventions are in place are appropriate, and whether they're understood and whether they're being carried out. So the feedback from CASMS this year was very good for risk assessment, but part of our job is to go in and dig a bit deeper to see what that looks like out on site. I think for outside people it looks very siloed. I think we have moved a long way in terms of bringing it together. We don't, we're not working towards ISO or anything like that. We're not in that place as an organisation yet to do that. And yes, it would be great as an organisation to have some great whizzy IT systems. We don't have that. Our flagging system, which I think was brought up at the last HR committee, and that's a low working system. I mean, the corporate team are working with IT at the moment to see whether we can move that on, so we can get that into, is it my 3 words, so that it can be even more accurate. So yeah, we recognise our health and safety is in part manual, but you know, the HSE have looked at the systems that we use and they are quite comfortable. And in terms of CBN and construction and the management of our contractors, we have a whole separate action plan around that to shift that into up and on the going forward, as you would have seen in the annual report.
Thank you. So, I mean, I think to come back on that, I mean, I think HSG 65 is really just a kind of framework of plan, do, check, review, which goes some way, and clearly, you know, there's lots of good indicators moving in the right direction. So, I mean, I think there's lots of confidence about the direction of travel. But I think the kinds of weaknesses that we're seeing at the moment around not being able to see all actions, not being able to have a at-a-glance view, I know that the HSE and the Building Safety Registrar are really focusing on how you systematically manage actions. So, you know, I'm not sure that thing is up to date. So I'd be very interested to hear what the HSE has actually had to say about our systems. And I do think that moving to a kind of third-party accredited, you know, ISO, I think it's 18001, isn't it, would highlight some of the areas where more progress needs to be made. So yeah, and I think I did put in writing. Sorry, it was so late. Where I think the kind of the direction of travel needs to be moving in terms of thinking on management systems.
Okay, we'll take that on board.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Councillor Wilcox, did you come in?
Yeah, so I'm on audit committee and I'd like to approach this from an audit perspective in terms of risk management. And I'm interested to know that you mentioned at least 3 different systems or principles, HSD 65, there was another one, Chasms,
Yeah.
and the corporate Pentana risk programme. So how do you actually decide things move from HSD 65 to Pentana? And how do we know that the risk is being properly captured, please?
So HSD 65, like as again, is a framework. So in terms of how we manage that, we've risk profiled. And we continue to risk profile on the back of chasms and information, accident, incident data. We're updating our risk profile and working with the new chief exec as we speak in the leadership board. And only, I think it was 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, we had a session where we sort of looked very seriously about what our risk profiling was for the organisation. So at the moment, it's being done the other way around, so it's been led by silos, so people have put their risks onto Pentana, and so we're shifting it the other way. So the new governance framework is allowing us to do that with the support of the corporate leadership team. So yeah, part of the action going forward this year is to review our risk profile, and we're doing that with the leadership board as we speak. And we've already had one session of their roles and responsibilities and how they will be involved in that. So, you know, it's a slow process within this organisation because it's a complex, and the HSC will say it's one of the most complex organisations that they have to deal with, and I think people would recognise that. And I think you know, we're not resting on our laurels. We spent all of the last year looking at the governance, which is that framework. So it all fits in to each other. We've worked quite hard with our colleagues in housing, and that's a slightly and I agree that the housing regulator is a new regulator, and the HSC are taking on that role, and so they are shifting a little bit, but their focus is on that, but they would still expect us to target our risk profile to the highest risks. Our highest risks at the moment are around construction, and some of the other which are identified in the annual report. So yeah, it's a shifting sand, but we're pushing it in the right direction with the support of the senior leadership and the new chief exec.
That's good, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula.
Yeah, I just wanted to say from a trade union perspective, I'm quite happy with how things are going. It's taken a long time. I think doing it slowly and getting it right is a really good thing. And I'm really pleased to hear from Tom that they're picking up other issues up there. And I really want us to see it as being proactive in health and safety, not reacting. If we can pick it up soon, and it's cheaper. It costs the council a lot less money if we pick something up when there's one tile missing off the roof rather than when the roof falls in, for instance. I just think, you know, I regularly meet with Christina, and I know I can pick up the phone to any one of the council officers around the table and have a conversation if there's something not quite right, in my opinion.
Thanks for that. It's good to hear. Yeah, just back to you, Tom. Really, I guess we've asked you to come here today because obviously we've got sort of clear immediate health and safety issues over at Sandy Park, and that's obviously something that the committee is interested in. But more broadly, I would say we're interested in our sites as workplaces and making sure that we're offering high quality, modern workplaces that people want to come to work in. Obviously for all the benefits you get from that, but recruitment and retention and things like that as well. So just more broadly, I guess with Sandy Park itself, I mean, I was down there about a year ago, and it looked like it needed massive amounts of investment to bring it up to a standard where you could say it's a really attractive workplace to come to work. And I guess with your wider role across our estate, many of the buildings you'll be managing will be workplaces. So I guess from our point of view, I don't know if you've got a view on that in terms of Sandy Park and the wider sort of estate at the moment, about where our high quality workplaces are and where actually they're not up to standard, and we'll need to invest massive amounts of money I guess the question is then, if we do need to invest millions of pounds, are we better off looking for new premises and selling the old ones? Is that a better investment? So I think going forward in the sort of medium to long term, I think this committee would like to sort of have a view of your work from that workplace perspective, but I don't know if you've got any views on that to begin with.
Yeah, I think I'd say Sandy Park is probably one of our more challenging sites with more historical issues. I'd say we're probably sat in one of our best examples, City Hall, of one of our better working environments. So I'd say that this and Sandy Park are probably both at the opposite end of the spectrum. I've not visited every site in the 8 months I've been in the organisation. As part of the Premise Collaboration meeting, and I chair that, as I said earlier, we go out every 2 months and we go to a different site. So we've been to 100 Temple Street, we've been to Sandy Park, we've been here, we'll be going to B-Bond, and I think we'll be going to, is it John Cousins' house, I think? So we'll be going to different locations to get that understanding and build that understanding. And as Paul was saying about finding things and catching things rather than waiting for them to come to us, we're going to go out and find them as well. So that piece of work's ongoing. I think we'd very much welcome the opportunity maybe to come back here and potentially in June maybe to provide a bit more information on a better overview of the working environment. But I think my view, and if you look at many other organisations, particularly after post-COVID, the natural approach is to have less space but better quality space. So that would be my typical starting point, and I think it's about more affordable solutions as well. So being more cost effective and more efficient with your space, so there could be some estate rationalisation opportunities there. I know we've moved some parts of the organisation into City Hall from other satellite buildings and workspaces and allowed us to maybe either dispose of or repurpose those assets in other ways. So there's a piece of work around that I think we need to continue to look at. So that would be my initial approach to that.
I think it helps with the culture of the organisation as well. So if you've got people off in satellite offices, often you notice that the culture is slightly different. And I think the unions would agree that's probably the case in Sandy Park. So obviously it's not just bricks and mortar, it's important about what we're trying to do as an organisation as well.
Thank you. As a ward councillor in Bristol West, it'd be really good if Councillor Barney and I had a visit around the site. I've never been able to manage to get a visit there, but I understand the issues from the outside, but it'd be really good to feel literally underneath it, because I know, there's massive issues in that site, and obviously its long-term future is an issue for the council anyway. But if we could arrange something, I appreciate it.
Yeah, please drop me a note and we'll arrange a time.
Right, thanks. Anybody else got any questions for Tom? No? I'll just move back to Christina then. I don't know if there's you've got some general things you might want to update us on.
Separate to the annual report.
Yeah.
So in terms of how we report our accident and incident data, we invested in a new accident incident reporting system a couple of years ago, as you know. But the data that we've always been able to draw down is historic data. We've been working really hard. The team has been working really hard with colleagues to ensure that we can have that data as live. So as we start to bring the data forward, it would be BI data, and that would be much more valuable to managers and help with managing their risk as well. So they won't have to wait 3 months till they get their old data. They'll be able to log on and see their data live, and we'll be able to support them better and target the health and safety risks better. And we're hopeful that that will be up and running and in place through the summer. So the next time we come to you, it's a piece of work we've been doing in the background. So actually the data that you'll get is live, and you can log on. We'll be able to show you that data. So that's one really positive thing that the team have been doing in the background. I think, and then the other thing I think behind was the flagging system. So again, the flagging system is a system that supports lone working, and I know there were some queries around that flagging system. We manage that through colleagues in IT, and it's updated on a nightly basis, so it's always current. But again, as I said previously, we're looking to update that system. At the moment it flags addresses and not places, so we know we still have some risks if people are working in outdoor spaces. It will only actually flag a property. So again, we're working with colleagues in IT to see whether we can, I think it's my 3 words, isn't it?
What
so
3
it
words?
can, so the data can be linked to that. So for example, parks workers will actually be able to log onto the system and actually see spaces rather than addresses. We've done some comms around that, so again, through the new governance structure and just working with our colleagues in trade unions and with PMTs, we're constantly ensuring that people have access to it and that they know what it's for. It was a question raised specifically this year in CASM's return, and that was really clear to us that not everybody was aware of that flagging system and how to use it, so we followed up on that as well. And we've got the access onto the front source pages. Before, people had to go into the health and safety pages and look around for it, so we've been quite assertive in making sure it's on those front pages and easy access.
And it is available to councillors as well.
Thanks for that. I think Councillor Thomas wanted to comment.
Can I ask, if we're looking at the annual report, is that right?
No, we're just yeah, few more horses in that. Sorry, yeah, we've got two updates today, so we're getting our fill of health and safety today.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm really pleased we're looking at the flagging system, because all too often I find that people who are going out on their own work in park guys, for instance, and they don't know about it. They're not told they're supposed to check it every time they go out. Even if you put the same place yesterday, check it again the next morning. Because something could have happened overnight. It gets updated so very frequently, there is no excuse. And I don't think even our social workers should be checking it if we're going on home visits. I don't think in that fast time,
There'll be things like there's a dangerous dog there.
Yeah,
Like that.
all man's got a samurai sword on his wall.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to look out for it a little bit. And that is the sort of thing that actually does get on there.
Yeah, there's 3 levels within the system. Additionally to that, we've updated those pages so that if there is a child protection or safeguarding issue, people within those teams will follow that through. They won't rely on the flagging system for that, so it runs in parallel with our colleagues in safeguarding.
Okay. All right. So, anybody else on that? So, no. So we'll move on to the official annual health and safety report. So I don't know if you want to present that. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
So colleagues, you've had this early, so you had it in June for last year, and now we're back into the normal cycle, I think, in terms of the annual report. So the annual report reports for health, safety and wellbeing performance from the 1st of April last year to 31st of March this year. We are a couple of days adrift with our data, but there's nothing to, of major concern there. The report looks at some significant issues. It looks at the governance. It provides information particularly around construction design management and building safety, and it's provided you with information on our new occupational health and EAP provider. Within that report, as normal, it gives you management information and data on accidents and incidents, and outlines the outcomes from the corporate health and safety monitoring system, CASMs. And this year we've given you the improvement plan to work with the strategy that came to you last year. So you had 2 documents this year. One was the report, and secondly was the actual delivery plan for delivering the strategy. So if you remember when we came in June, we signed off the 5-year strategy, and this is the work that we're doing to actually deliver some of that. There's other work alongside of that, which is the construction design action plan, also the ongoing implementation of the occupational health and EAP provider, just to make sure, and the management of that, and a review, ongoing review of our governance arrangements. I don't know if people have got any, just in terms of outputs, our strategy has been delivered to everybody throughout the organisation. It's on the source pages, it's gone through the decision pathway, and we share that with colleagues at any opportunity. The new health and safety policy was updated and signed by our previous chief exec, Paul Martin, if you remember. It had been sat there for a while, not signed, and it's now with our new chief exec waiting to go live. So Nick has signed that. It's just waiting to go up onto the web pages, and we'll do a comms out on that. We've had no formal enforcement this year since we came to you from the HSC. They have visited around asbestos in schools. It continues to be one of the things that the national areas that they will continue to look at. They have, there's been no engagement with the HSC since the Centre Park incident. So we continue to deliver a programme which is comprehensive of mental health and wellbeing, and this year we did the MOTs for staff. So we offered nearly 200 individual sessions to staff where they could go and have proactive health checks, and we've actually put some more on because the uptake from that and the feedback on that was really, really good. So we've increased our support around mental health and wellbeing this year, and we've increased our support around musculoskeletal and supporting backs and keep moving initiatives within the workplace. Because obviously musculoskeletal is still high and above the national average, and that's partly because there are lots of people who are working at home, that work environment. So it would be DSE would be seen as a low risk because we've got a lot of it. We do a lot of activity around that, and we've made sure. I think we've had 800 individual sessions for DSE and 800. We have 800 mental health at work first aiders across the organisation. So we continue to support and deliver in those areas.
You think? Sorry, you think?
Yes, I think that's probably because it's all written. It's a big report. It's a detailed report.
Thanks for that. So I did have Trone first, but I'll come to you afterwards, Tim.
Thanks very much. Can I just check on reportable incidents on page 27? Are those kind of riddle over 3 days lost reportable incidents? Is that what that measures?
Yeah, so that will measures reportables to the HSC. Okay. So we break that down. So some are over 7 days, and some are reportable as serious injuries.
Yeah.
So we've broken those down. I think two dangerous occurrences which were related to asbestos in housing. But no further action was taken by the HSC on follow-up of that. So all of riddles are done by the professional corporate health and safety team. So we get a consistent approach, and all of those are investigated and followed up with measures.
Okay. I mean, it's obviously any event is distressing, but it is positive to see the very significant improvement over time. I mean, particularly on growth and regen, down from 32 5 years ago to 8. What's the what's behind that real improvement?
We've worked really hard with those colleagues on their risk assessments, on their safe systems of work, on their interventions. We've made sure that we've followed up with every manager. So every incident is followed up. Every incident that comes in has a conversation with the manager, and every incident has a follow-up with the member of staff. So I think since COVID, that's where we've made our improvements, and it's sort of stuff that's done in the background really that people don't really know that that's happening. But we spend a lot of time doing that, talking it through, helping managers to revise the risk assessments and look at what went wrong.
Great. Okay. Thank you. On page 29 and 30, you've got that kind of bar chart on health and safety performance. So the bar chart on page 30 would indicate, for example, as I understand it in growth and regen, that only 55% of managers are saying that they've got the kind of the health and safety basics in place, which would kind of imply that we've got 45% of managers in growth and regen who haven't got the health and safety basics in place. So I'm just wondering how you would treat and address that.
So part of the action out of CASMs, so this year with CASMs we reduced the number of questions, so they were really targeted. So ideally that all of the questions should have been answered, and the aim would be like to get 100% of return, which we did this year, but then for next year to start looking at 100% in terms of the quality of those questions, because they're only covering the basics and not covering any nice to have. So out of that data, where the corporate health and safety team are working with each manager so they make sure that they have an action plan in place, which is really smart. And then we follow up with that, and they're out there working with those individual managers. That will happen before the next CASMs. So by the time we get to the next CASMs, hopefully, and we're working on this, moving away from this tick box. So it's about not just the ticking off the yes, I've got it in place, but we've actually analysed the narrative to see what that narrative looks like. And I think that's explaining where that fits into our management system. So there's a lot of work going on in the background by the corporate team to actually sort of unpeel the onion.
And we might well get some improvement.
You can get some improvement on that, and I think that's why we're not quite ready yet for the ISO. Just trying to get, does that make sense?
Yeah,
trying to get these
absolutely.
basics in place, and then we can move forward to that.
And then the final thing is, I mean, we've obviously got a sort of organisational health and safety risk assessment in terms of what we think are the greatest risks.
Yes.
Is that shared with this committee so that we can, you know, I think the lack of an action tracker, for example, I might identify as a key organisational risk if we haven't got them all in one place. So I'm just wondering whether that can be shared.
Yeah, I've got those risks. So I manage those risks with Steph there on Pantana. So, and one of the key risks is failure to manage health and safety and well-being across the organisation with our management systems. So, has improved actually how it was a few years ago. But more than happy to, if that's appropriate, to bring those. We've got construction design on there, and we've got mental health and well-being and violence and aggression.
Yeah, look, I think it would be helpful to get that context. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim?
Yeah, it's just about DSE. I'm sorry if I missed it in the report. Do we insist on people doing
what DSE assessment? So we've reviewed all of the guidance and everybody, there's a checklist, so everybody, no matter whether they're working at home or working in the office, must complete a DSE checklist. And it effectively, that's the assessment, goes through all the criteria. Then if people answer no to any of those questions, they then link in to our, we have the ergonomics health and safety advisor, and Emma will go out and work with them to make sure they've got the right equipment, the right setup at home and in the workplace. So we've got one full-time post that is just working on that across the organisation, and it's stretched.
And so do we supply equipment for people at home then?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
And who maintains it? Just thinking of the liability. Does anyone check it, or is that?
Or in terms of chairs and things like that? It's down to the individual to let us know if it's broken.
That's clear.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
I have two questions. The first is that I think it's great that we've managed to kind of get all of these incidents down by so much. I was wondering, do we know how we are comparing with other local authorities? Because I still don't know whether the 640 incidents for this year is actually high or low in comparison to other local authorities, or if it's just we're just comparing with our previous selves.
We haven't done benchmarking with, if that's something that the committee would like, it's easy to do. You can access that information and do some benchmarking.
I think that would be a good idea.
And it would be with similar size local authorities we would go to. Pre-COVID, it was something that we would do quite frequently, so we could do that.
I think that would be great, just so that we know what our targets would be. The other question is that whilst I can very much kind of guess where the physical violence is coming from, children education, can you give me a kind of idea of what's happening in Growth and Regen, where it seems to consistently provide some of the highest levels of incidents?
Yeah, so again, every incident is followed up with the manager and the service, and we've done quite a lot of work in terms of intervention, looking at risk assessments, looking at their own working procedures, making sure they're reported. So it's like the process of following that through. So obviously, you're right, most of the physical violence incidents comes from pupils in special educational needs, but we do follow up every, and in a case where it would be physical violence to a member of staff, that would be reported to the police. So that the whole process.
But what is it about Growth and Regen which means it's consistently performing higher?
I think part of that was picked up, it was on the back of Barton House and some of the stresses around those issues.
Okay. Alright.
And the other height is within our citizen service point, where it's quite high, and also within the library service. So just generally members of the public, their behaviour has changed. I mean, post-COVID, and people are, they behave in a different way. So they are at times much more aggressive. And at times in libraries we've had incidents of physical violence, and I think what we've had people chasing people down the street with machetes and things like that.
Yeah, something like that happened within my ward, but it's crazy to think that libraries are a potential source of physical violence.
Mm-hmm. I think it is hotspots, so where you've got the public, where years ago it used to be around computers and the use of computers, but now I think when we just look at it, it's people who have a number of issues and they come into our public spaces. So we've worked quite hard with individual sites and individual service points to make sure that we support and put the right interventions, and they're different they're very different, so we don't do a generalised, everybody will have security guards. It's done on the site specific, depending on what those issues are.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Weston.
Thank you. Building on what Zoe was saying there, I think I would, this could be after the meeting, but I think I would quite like a sort of context breakdown about where these incidents are happening, which I think is what you were going for. So, it's surprising that libraries are a den of violence. It's possibly even more surprising that the resources team also seem, accountants don't strike me as a, particularly violent mob. But so I'd quite like to know, when Growth and Regen, where are these incidents happening? When it comes to resources, where are they happening? I think that context helps us judge what the health and safety risks are, and possibly stops me being quite as flippant as I probably shouldn't have been on camera.
So in the resources, it's generally physical violences and a lot of other citizens' service points.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, but also our legal service take quite a lot of aggression because they deal with a lot of sensitive cases, and where people get frustrated. The line in the sand has moved. Post-COVID, the line in the sand has definitely moved, and where people might have had some restraint, they don't have that restraint any longer, and quite often our staff are at the front of that aggression. But we've done lots of work around that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I'm glad you've done a lot of work on it, but it's interesting though, when you look at the number of incidents, and things like that, there does seem to have slightly dropped in some areas and risen in others. So if we could just have a breakdown of where the incident is happening, I'd appreciate it.
That breakdown.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. Kerry?
Zoe pointed out about libraries and stuff, but our library in Hartcliffe, we don't own the building. Our library is in a building where lots of other services are offered, and obviously the building next door to that used to be a rent office, but now it's social services. So we do own that building, but that whole complex of lots of shops, we've got Morrison's there, so that whole area seems to be a bit of a target, and it always has been. If you look back through history, it used to be the old Simons Avenue, and we all know what happened there. We had riots and all sorts. So it's all of that taken into consideration. And with, you mentioned about behaviours around before and during and after COVID, but obviously during COVID, you weren't supposed to be going out, you weren't supposed to be visiting certain places. So does that affect the statistics during
Yeah,
COVID?
so if you look at the 2 years, the COVID years, there's a drop in the stats. As I say, we've done quite a lot of intervention work with staff to make staff feel safe. At the citizen service point, we've put in additional resources for them so that they've got breakaway areas, and it comes back to the quality of workplace that Tom's been talking about earlier, to make sure that where we've got hotspots, we've also got the breakaway areas for the staff, and they've got the right support in terms of feeling confident that one, they can deal with it, secondly that their safety isn't compromised, and thirdly that they've got somewhere to go once they've dealt with that insecurity. So I think that's been our strategy really, and anything that needs reporting, which is of a criminal offence, just get reported and follow through.
Thanks. I think Zoe will come back in.
So obviously, we have, our employee assistance programs for, all Bristol City employees. However, obviously it appears that some roles within the council are more high risk than others. If you're working in, for example, childcare or apparently a library, you're going to be at greater risk than other people. Do you feel that we are providing adequate kind of aftercare and support that is focused specifically on needs, not just like a general kind of like, oh yeah, everyone has access to these services, but are we prioritising people who are at higher risk to make sure that, if there is an incident, they're not waiting longer than they should be because they're at higher risk. I suppose the other aspect is that a lot of these areas have lower retention rates anyway, especially if you're working in, say, adult social care or young or SEND care. And obviously we've got huge issues with library closures and staff vacancies for them. The idea that actually a library isn't a safe place to work isn't going to make people want to work at the library more. So I think, we really need to look into how we are targeting support to the more vulnerable areas, as well as providing a base level of aftercare around the council.
Yeah, so I think that we have a two-tiered system within we have a facility within the EAP to fast-track people. We also have, within our own corporate wellbeing team, we have access to professional support and advice, which we do get called in frequently to deal with specific cases. Whether the balance is right at the moment, I'm not sure, but we have responded to specifics and we've done enhanced support where we've been asked to do that.
James, I know that we were with Vital Health Group at one point. Who is our current EAP provider?
Got a new one now.
We have, so our new EAP provider is PAM, P-A-M, yes.
And I manage that contract, and within that contract there's a tiered system that we can get people. So but also within that system, it's not just about counselling, it's about people being proactive, going onto the platform. There's a wealth of resource there. That wasn't with our other provider. So we've been trying to get people to be proactive, and every single employee has access to that platform. So it's not just counselling; it's a work.
Okay, no, that's great. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Paula, did you want to come in? Tim, did you?
The really horrible thing that happened to a colleague of mine at St George Library. A gentleman asked her if she could help him print off some pictures. She said okay. She went over to public access computers with him. Said they are explicit. She explained she couldn't do that. He then got a warning letter and then came back and said, I know she reported me, I'm coming back with a shotgun. She's been at work for 2 weeks since. She can't physically go back into it.
That's
horrendous. Yeah. So that's the sort of behaviour we get in libraries, and it's not just an odd occasion anymore. It's definitely changed since COVID. People, before we used to be the person that somebody could come and talk to because nobody else has got time for you, but now we are the only people, and we're always doing the social care aspect in the library service now, and it's not what we're trained to do.
Do you think
on a BG7?
Do you think it's a change in attitude of the public, or do you think that there has been a fundamental change in the service that Bristol Council provides?
I think it's an attitude of the public.
Right.
To be honest, I have to be honest, I've not worked in a public library for a year now, nearly a year, because James very kindly allowed me to be released full time to do what I do now. But yeah, I still speak to my colleagues and my friends out there. I think there is a general change, because there are times when we're unexpectedly closed. People don't accept that, and they expect to be able to do and say what they want to us.
So that individual question you raised, I assume we're looking after that individual, and it's been
she's
managed.
She's got me on speed dial. She gets some really good help from the AP. We're going through the process, and she'll be reading.
And is that something that was reported to the police as well?
Eventually.
Right.
It got there, but
yeah.
I felt personally that it wasn't particularly well handled by our manager in the library service.
Okay.
In that they should have reported it, not expected my colleague to report it. But it's all, but, gentleman apparently has mental health issues, but...
What is the Bristol policy on reportings of this? Is it meant to be done by the manager, or is it
I
meant
think
to
it
be
can
done
be
by
either either, and we have got colleagues who won't look at one instance, and we do it on their behalf now. Management can do it over and above them. So we will do it. We've had a case in the past where there was a stalking incident, but yeah, it was very unpleasant for my colleague.
All right, thanks for that.
Yes,
Tim, and then
very
we'll move
half asked the question that I was going to ask. We keep on saying, post-COVID's going on. It's not particularly to do with the disease. A lot of things have changed. If you look at America and to an extent here, the respect for government employees has gone way down. Our money is less, so the global. Has there been? Do we know of any kind of research, academic research, on why this has happened, just so we can work out how to address it?
I'm not aware of any, but I can certainly.
There must. I'm sure there must.
I can definitely find out. I've got colleagues in the old Avon areas, and I did actually phone up, contact my friend who's in charge of Kingswood Library, and they know him as well. He goes in there. He's not done anything like that to them, but he knows. And when he says things like, I can print off far worse pictures than that at Kingswood Library because their firewalls aren't as good. And telling me you've got mental health problems isn't a reason for it. That's an excuse. And I get so angry about it,
All right, okay. Thanks for that, Christina.
Because I think there's probably some research on there I can dig out for you.
Yeah.
Just generally over the triggers that have, from that point out of COVID, why people are behave differently now. So I can find out.
But I think if we've got some idea why it's happened, then we might be able to address it better.
Yeah, contact the designated use as well.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other points on this item? No? Okay, so we have to, are we happy to note this report? Yeah, good. People want a comfort break now, or should we move on? Yeah, should we say, it's 5 minutes enough, or 10 minutes? 5 minutes? Yeah, 5 minute comfort break then, so, and then we'll move on to the apprenticeship item, okay? Thanks. Can we bring the meeting back to order, please? Thank you. So, the next item we've got is an update on training, learning and development and apprenticeships. So we've got a sort of a team effort with this one. But I think, Sally, you're going to go first, and I don't know if you just want to start off and just explain your role to the committee.
Yeah, surely. So I'm the Learning and Organisational Development Manager, so I manage the digital learning team, the organisational development team and the learning and development team. So my report covered the leadership and management training that we currently have on offer. So we have our leadership framework, which actually underpins all our leadership development. So that's the framework sets out the expectations of managers, aspiring managers and senior leaders about how they lead and develop their team. And supporting the framework, we have a number of leadership webinars which cover core skills, so things like how you lead your team, understanding their different working styles, working with their team's strengths, how you have developed coaching conversations with your team members. We also recently redesigned and relaunched the Key Information for Managers workshop, which is aimed at new leaders, and that again walks people through the leadership framework and the support services that are available. And there's also a site which is a one space for managers to access information easily and quickly. There is the mandatory e-learning, which is available on the Learning Hub. Obviously there's a set of e-learning that all employees need to complete, and then there's additional courses that we ask leaders to complete as well. We also offer a team leader development programme, which actually is popular, and that's for new and prospective team leaders or those stepping into a line manager role. And this includes an overview of council policy and procedures, helping them with their skills around leading their team, about motivating a team, how to communicate with your team well. We also run the Understanding Cultural Values and Behaviours leadership programme, which looks at 10 different behaviours and how you communicate with different cultures. We also run bespoke leadership programmes, so we are at the end point of running a programme in estates, services in housing, and that's gone extremely well. It's been over 18 months where we've built up trust with the leadership team there and covered subjects like productivity and personal effectiveness, change management and how you overcome resistance, how you manage performance and attendance. And we've worked very closely with the leadership team who've also guided the themes that we work on. So that's proved to be very successful. And we also, we are coaches as well, so we coach managers and leaders in having different types of conversations to get the best out of your team. So that's a quick run through my report. So I know James is going to talk about apprenticeships now.
Thanks, Sally. Thank you very much, Chair. Just pass on formally apologies from our colleagues, Eloise and Son, who are unable to be here today. I know that I am a poor substitute for them, so if there are any questions of detail, I may have to take those back and provide written answers subsequently. The report that you have before you join with Sally's content also covers apprenticeships, of which we've had just under 200 new starts since last April and nearly 1,200 over the past 8 years. We've used nearly £10 million of apprenticeship levy over that period of time. We do still have some sharing arrangements in place with other local bodies, and we will be reviewing those sharing arrangements because such is the level of success in our own apprenticeship programmes that we're probably going to need to utilise that fund for ourselves rather than sharing it with others. So the report highlights some of the key initiatives, and by the way, I should say thank you to those members here present who joined us a couple of weeks ago for National Apprenticeship Week, and we had a sort of ceremony in a conference hall, which was very well received, and we've had some good feedback from that, so thank you. The report talks about our data academy and some the professional apprenticeships that we're doing, and moving forward, the apprenticeship strategy will be part of the overall workforce strategy, which, as you know, is another item on this agenda. So I won't repeat any more from the report, but happy to take questions or go and find out further information.
Thank you, both of you, for that update. Any questions at all on this item? Kerry.
I'm just looking at the report, I think it's page 4. It says future priorities, and it says we aim to diversify our talent pool by enriching outreach efforts to underrepresented groups such as racially minoritized, disabled people and young people aged 16 to 24 through targeted campaigns, partnerships, educational institutions, and so I just wondered what the uptake is for my ward specifically, because as we all know, young people are very unlikely to go to university. Only 8% of young people go to university. So what's the uptake of them being employed by the local authority in any service?
So I'll need to come back to you on that, Councillor Bales. We don't have ward level detail at my fingertips at the moment, but I will find that out and come back to you.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to say well done on the fact that we haven't returned any of the levy funds this financial year, because that's always something that in the past that was very frustrating for everybody. So I think that that's really good progress. I just wanted to have a bit more information on. I'm interested. I mean, I do think that one of the difficulties about the apprenticeships is getting that 20% of off-site time properly trained. And you've said here that you're exploring flexible training solutions that align more closely with operational needs. Could you give us a bit more information on what that might actually look like?
May I come back to you on that, because I wouldn't want to misspeak and promise something that wasn't actually on its way. But yeah, I mean, it is a debate that it is often had between my colleagues who run the apprenticeship programme and hiring managers, because sometimes there are pressures on the service that mean that someone not being there, for instance, one day a week can be problematic. So I think that they're exploring different ways, perhaps by front loading or by just taking a more flexible approach. So if I can get some more details, and I'll share that with you, and obviously copy the chair of the committee in as well, if that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Zoe?
So not necessarily with Bristol City Council per se, but I know that one of the biggest challenges within apprenticeships in general is when the employers essentially do not allow enough time for their study alongside the work, which means that they don't get qualified and they have to extend their apprenticeship, thus keeping them on a lower pay. What provisions are there within the council to stop this from happening, to make sure that apprentices have the correct amount of time to do their studies alongside the work?
So I can assure the committee that there are very few instances where we've been in the situation of extending people's apprenticeships, and those extensions have normally been for 3-4 months, and normally it's not been because they've been prevented. It's been that something has happened in their life, something traumatic normally, that means that they've had to take some time out. So ordinarily, I'm not aware of any extensions in the last the time I've been head of HR where that's taken place because people haven't been afforded the time that we need. Because we do work in detail with managers, and where problems present themselves, we work as creatively as we can with them to overcome them.
It's great to hear that you have such a hands-on kind of approach to the apprenticeship schemes. It's really great to hear.
So I'll just, because I've got a couple of questions straight, and I'll bring you back. Just on the sort of managers training. And I see in there we've got sort of the word mandatory training. So I just because obviously we know there's certain services or certain departments where you might say there's some cultural issues at the moment, and we're probably not performing as well as we could do, and a lot of that comes down to the leadership. So I just wondered, in terms of mandatory, what do we mean by that, and what does it cover?
Well, ideally, mandatory is that everybody completes it, but we do recognise that we don't have 100% compliance, so we will do targeted comms to those areas. We will stress the importance and about giving time for your employees to complete the mandatory training required, because there's a reason why it's called that. And we also, we've been worked really hard not to sort of overload those courses as well, so they've been sort of particularly sort of selected, that those are the important courses that people do then.
If I may add, Chair, particularly in relation to mandatory training for managers, when I become aware of either particular teams or services, or even particular individuals who, for whatever reason, are struggling to complete those, we have a conversation about that, and normally we're able to find a way that overcomes any sort of concerns, or just sometimes it's I know it myself. Diaries are really difficult, and you actively need to put the time aside to do your own, exactly, to invest in your own development, and the mandatory training. Certainly, I'm very familiar with the manager stuff. It is, it's not massively onerous. You can chunk through it quite quickly if you reserve that dedicated time for it.
Okay, thanks for that. And just on the apprenticeships as well, I'd like to say as well, I was really impressed in terms of what we've been doing on this, and what's been going on in this agenda was a lot more than I assumed was going on maybe a year ago. And it was really good to be at that event, to see the variety of apprenticeships, from sort of entry level to degree level apprenticeships. So we're doing it right across the board. I just wondered, in some of the areas where we're still struggling for skilled people, I don't know, like highways engineers and other types of engineering skills that we need and we're short of, and of course there's other stuff I'm just thinking about. Examples I know about. How are we sort of approaching apprenticeships as a solution for those services? Can we be pushing them to do more? Because otherwise we're just going to struggle on out year after year, and potentially using agency staff and things like that, or private sector consultants to come in, when potentially we could invest a little bit now in the short term to get that long term benefit. I'm still not entirely convinced that we're exploiting apprenticeships as much as we could for those skilled trades that we need.
Inevitably, Chair, it's a slow burn, because depending on who is to become the apprentice will determine how many years of study and so on and so forth that it will take to build them to the level of expertise that you need right now. So it is. I would be lying if I said there weren't some challenging conversations that we have with managers to extol the benefits. This is part of an overall approach really to succession planning, workforce planning, and inevitably, because of the pressures, focus on the here and now rather than focusing, say, 3, 4, 5 years in advance, and being mindful of the workforce and its age profile and what people may or may not do when they reach certain points, and the changing economy in which we work is a challenge as well. And the draw of big projects. So engineering, for example, with one of the world's largest building sites, not a million miles away.
So-
As I stood on the Park and Ride bus stop this morning, a couple of HPC buses came past to bus the people out to Hinckley. So there are challenges, and those are always going to be with us. So yeah, we do work hard with managers to sell the benefits of apprenticeships. There's always more that we can do.
Okay, thanks, James. Trey?
Yeah, I mean, following on from Kai's point, really, I mean, I think really encouraging to see what's happening here. Just a bit in terms of the apprenticeships to date, a bit more kind of tabulated information. You talk about the social work, 43 people doing the kind of social work apprenticeships, and then some in public health, occupational therapy, environmental health. Having a sense of those numbers out of the 178 would be good. And then, as we talk about the priorities for apprenticeships in the future, then perhaps we might be looking at numbers in the future and kind of target areas, which then links into the workforce planning.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on this item? No? Okay, well, thanks for that. Thanks for the update, and it's really interesting. And we're happy to note that report. Yeah, okay, thank you. So the next item is the workforce strategy, which is quite a big piece of work for the council. And this document will be around for quite a while, won't it? Is it sort of a 5-year sort of plan, isn't it? So I think this is our last chance, isn't it, really, to take a view on it as a HR committee before it gets adopted later on. So this is obviously our chance today to express our view on it. So,
thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an update report following the discussion you had at September's committee meeting. And at that time, there'd been an awful lot of engagement with focus groups, with staff, trade union staff-led groups, managers, etc., to try and inform the priorities of a new workforce strategy. But alongside this, work has begun on a refresh of our corporate strategy, and of course we want to make sure that the priorities from the workforce strategy align with those of the corporate strategy. And the purpose of a workforce strategy is to understand what the requirements of our workforce are in the future, to meet that future vision of the council, making sure we've got the right people with the right skills in the right place. So we want those two pieces of work to align. Also, what we'll input into the strategy is what our HR data is telling us, and also what our staff tell us through our staff survey results. So the output of that engagement and indeed the input from HR committee last year has given us an awful lot of content for new strategy. We've distilled that at this stage into a sort of plan on a page, which is the appendix that is part of your info pack for today. That gives a draft vision and 4 key priority areas that will be the foundations for the strategy. So those areas are around being prepared for the future, developing a one council culture and leadership, improving representation and equity, and becoming an employer of choice. And of course there's an awful lot that would sit underneath that. So this is just really those kind of key priority areas and what good might look like if we were to achieve it. So we're very keen to have this as a discussion item this morning. Any thoughts about what could be added into priorities, what we might want to see added? Obviously there's a bit further engagement that we would need to do, whether it aligns with the timetable of future HR committee meetings, so we may have to share drafts sort of outside of the formality of the meeting, but we're very interested to have the input of HR committee as that strategy develops.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Just go with Linda first.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, hi. 2 things I want to say. One is, and I take what you're saying about this is a very high level document.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask some questions. I mean, if this is a discursive item, so it's about, talk about how we would do things. And I think that the question would be about how are we proactively engaging with AI, as in, training people on Copilot and ChatGPT and all of those sort of things. And the second question I would want to discuss, which is something that I'm always banging the drum about, and that's about, we talk a lot about retention, and I've still not got over the shock of the fact that we recently saw on the data that the average terms of period of service is about 8 years.
Yes, no.
Or so, well, it's around
Yeah,
that,
it's-
say. So
It's low.
I just think that that whole thing about retention, and I go on to this whole point again, it's going to be about performance management, which is about challenging and praising people. Because I do have a sense of working with officers in the council that sometimes I feel that really excellent officers go off somewhere else. And is that because they're not recognised, or is that because they get a better offer somewhere else? But we should really be able to have the answers to those things. So, and it is about those things. So I just want to offer those up for a discussion.
Sorry, were you?
No, go on, Mark, and then I'll get on.
Okay. I realise I'm the newbie, so I'm only subbing for today. For me, the reports, it's not particularly useful for me. I understand what's there. We seem to have a situation where sickness is going down, long-term sickness is going down. Am I in the right report? I hope so. No, am I in the wrong one?
Workforce strategy.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
one,
workforce
it's just
is-
one page.
Oh, okay, in that case, I thought I'd moved along.
Yeah, that's
I'll
the
wait
next.
for six. I've got a lot on that one.
Okay, all right. Sorry.
So much like Paula, retention is something that I'm hugely passionate about, and I'm going to sound like a one-track record. I really want us to look into the feasibility of a 4-day work week. We are no longer providing competitive benefits to the private sector because everyone is doing flexible working, and we're never going to be able to provide comparable wages either. We need to start looking at ways that we can actually make Bristol City become an attractive employer and be competitive within the recruitment sector. I mentioned this, several HR committees ago, and I was sure that somebody was going to go off and do perhaps like a feasibility study or something. I've not seen anything to that effect ever since I raised it back then. Is it possible we can actually just, not saying we move forward with it.
Budget amendment in then, shouldn't you?
Is it possible we can get some officers to just have a look at whether or not that is something that would be possible to do? I've had the 4-day work week people ever since then calling me to say, is this something that you're genuinely considering as a council? And at each time I'm saying no, because at the moment we don't have any data on it. But they are essentially saying if we wanted to send some officers to do a consultation with them, because with other councils, they would be willing to send us with them. Until we've got some of the officers looking into whether or not it's possible in Bristol, I think it's just the best way to move forward and make us a competitive employer.
Okay. Mark?
Because this is being filmed and there's a record, can I make it clear I really think we shouldn't move to a 4-day week. Utterly opposed to that. I understand where you're coming from, but actually, having worked in the private sector, very few areas of the private sector are on a 4-day week, and I think the services we provide require 5 days to actually do the work. I don't think there's a way to condense our work ratios and things we need to do into 4 days.
What I would say is the benefit of the 4-day week is that we could then have people work 1 4-day whereas the other 4 days. So where we're only providing 5 days a week support, we could actually provide 7 days a week.
All right.
I've registered my position.
So I'll just say on the 4-day week, someone now could request a 4-day week. So a member of staff here could request a 4-day week. So it means many things, doesn't it? It could be doing your current full-time hours within 4 days. It could, and there's a sort of macroeconomic arguments, isn't there, about reducing the working week and have a standard 4-day working. So when people say a 4-day working week, it means many things. So I think we probably need to be clear on exactly.
Anyway, don't we? So that's a 4 and a 5, isn't it?
So
is that how it works?
So I've made
Yeah.
James may have the technical details. So yeah, we have a flexible working policy, and obviously some people work different contracts anyway, perhaps a job share, but people can apply for a part-time role, job share. We also have a flexible working policy that means you can apply to reduce your working hours, a compressed fortnight, so 5 one day, 4 another, or any variation within that. So there are certainly opportunities for everybody to work a full day if they wished. And
Or
that's
term time only,
term time only,
or
is an option.
annualised hours, so you will work more at certain periods of the year than at other periods of the year. So there is quite a
There's a
menu
fair
of
degree of
options.
existing flexibility.
There are services that doesn't work.
And that's
You know
I
which
think,
service I'm
I think that's
talking
probably what Councillor
The life
Baskin was
service.
referring to. It is a conundrum of permitting, encouraging flexible working at the same time as running the services that the public rightly expect us to offer to them so many days per week. And that's 5 days a week, 7 days a week, 24/7, whatever that is. So there is a conundrum there to be kind of worked through.
Okay.
I think this is something we should look at, but not now. And,
Yeah.
and I presume what you're meeting is that working 4 days, getting paid for 5, to put it very simplistic, rather than what we've already got. And there is some evidence of people just more efficient in 4 days. So, could we have it as an agenda item? I think it is worth having a proper debate about it, looking at some of the evidence. And there was certainly a lot. James Crawford, one of our accounts, very keen on this as well. Talked to James about it. And also respecting Mark's, but I don't know the answer. I think actually this committee should be looking at kind of a bit of that blue sky thinking.
I think it's about not necessarily making decisions, but at least getting the info so we can
Right.
better.
And I think it's more in the budget than anything else. I think it's better.
No, I mean, but any consultation is going to cost the council money. And that's where, if you want to do that kind of consultation, you need to have the money to do it.
This is a piece of work that's live and ongoing, and it can look at these things. We're looking at everything, really, aren't we?
Yeah.
So nothing's off the table, is it? Great.
Thanks, Guy. I'm not clear. I think it's good. I think it's good, and I think it's quite an adaptable thing that fits with the emerging corporate strategy. It'd be good to know who's got ownership of this draft workplace strategy, of the workforce strategy, because one of the things that came out in the corporate strategy workshops was that we've got a transformation director whose responsibility is looking at our target operating model. Well, I'd want to understand how that fits with the HR function, with the transformation director, and I think it's a really important piece of work to work out what the future shape of the organisation should be like. Paul mentioned AI, but just the impact of digital enablement should be changing the shape and the way that the organisation is operating. Picking up on kind of Paula and Zoe's points around the 4-day week staff satisfaction. Do we have kind of anonymised extracts from exit interviews in terms of patterns of what it is that people say about the organisation when they move on? So that will give us some grounding in key organisational development issues. And similarly, staff satisfaction surveys will, people may care more about do they feel listened to by their manager than do they want a 4-day week. So I think trying to ground it in the evidence would be really helpful. And I think not losing sight of Bristol citizens, I think they want to know that we've got an efficient and productive council. And I don't really think that. I think the only place that comes across is we've got a performance culture with clear accountability while recognising, we've got a performance culture that values efficiency and productivity and then carry on with the rest of it. I think having that sense that we're here to serve the people of Bristol efficiently and productively would be useful in that. Thanks.
I did have one question, but also just following on. One thing that struck me is what are we doing in terms of workforce strategy across kind of our main competitors? I'm thinking Somerset, North Somerset, South Gloucestershire, because we're all competing for the same social workers. Is there any thinking about would make them plan workforce on a bigger geographical patch.
I just think the other complication as well with shorter working weeks and things like that is we're in sort of a national pay bargaining, and so the full-time week is nationally negotiated. So if we ever wanted to, reduce it to a 35-hour week or something
It's
like
in
that,
our claim for this year.
which is, but that's all dealt with nationally, and I think long term we're better off being in those
leading the way
in those national negotiations. So I think I just think that's where the unions want to do their business now at national level.
I take a short working week for no less money.
But if that does that, I think there's genuine, like you say, there's genuine evidence and argument that productivity goes up if you reduce the working week. So there's but I wouldn't want us to break the national agreements and do stuff locally ourselves.
I mean, my biggest concern would be going back to, I think if we were ever going to move on to that, we would really have to get the performance management in line first. And I don't think we have that universally across the organisation.
And I think you're right, it's kind of often seen as, when you talk about that, it's a stick, but actually people not being praised for doing a good job and
that challenge and praise
told they're doing well.
Yeah.
I think that's a big, that causes a morale issue and may cause people to leave. Because they don't know if they're doing a good job or not, and they need to be told.
Exactly.
I think also sometimes they don't have the backup they want.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about frontline staff, which is where my hesitation on 4-day working week comes from. The big one that I always hit, and it sort of links to the next report, is housing. So in our area, for one period earlier this year, we should have had 8 housing officers. We had 1.5. Due to a combination of long-term sick, staff that had left, they had to have holiday, 1.5. Now it's several weeks. We're running at 3.5 now. It's got to the point I actually picked up the phone to John Smith and said, you've got to provide all the other 3.5, you're going to burn out, and the manager's going to collapse.
That is happening.
And that is happening. And part of the problem there is that those housing officers are right on the front line. They are dealing with some of the worst problems we've got, some of the real problem tenants. It's almost unsolvable. They can't discipline that tenant, and they're getting in the neck from all the other residents who are reporting those complaints. And they're in that firing line. I reckon if you drilled into where that stress and that burnout is, I'd be surprised if that's not very over-represented in the housing team. And I think that's because we are sometimes a bit gun-shy and legal of taking enforcement against those problem tenants. And I think that's hitting our front line in some of our, in a really bad way.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other points to make on this item? So it might come back to us then.
Thank you to everybody for your...
Can we see more granular detail?
Of course, yes. This was really just a plan on the page to give you those priority areas under which the strategy will be written and in detail action will be taken. So the journey of this will be at this stage, I believe, to Strategy and Resources Committee for sign-off. I mean, ultimately it is for the Chief Executive, it's around the workforce, but of course it is really important that this committee has input into it. But thank you everybody for your input, and we'll make sure that that's reflected in there, and I'm happy to pick up offline on any specific queries that people might have.
Okay, thanks for that. So we'll be kept up to date on that. So we'll move on to the regular HR dashboard item. Are you driving this, Mark, or James?
We'll
yeah.
do a double
act. Yes. Okay. So I don't know if you want to highlight anything, and then I'm sure people have looked at the dashboard and they might have stuff themselves.
Sure.
Yeah.
In summary, I guess, Chair, we're bigger than we have been recently. We've included a breakdown on the second page of this report of the various divisions of the council, which do, as you can see, vary quite wildly in size at present. The creation of a housing directorate will no doubt aid that, and it's a little bit of evening out. The salary range and tenure that was referenced earlier in the meeting is included on the third page, and I mean it's important to note that the smallest bar on the left-hand side on salaries, most of our salaries, if not all of them, will be around, the smallest we offer now is £24,309 per year, so it won't be long before that bar joins the next, once we have this year's living wage award published. Following page looks at our starters and leavers, as you can see that the post-COVID impact, where in the early part of the pandemic everyone froze, and then as things returned to some semblance of normality, then everyone wanted to get a new job and do something different, and you can see the after effect of that. We're now reducing significantly from that peak in early 2023, where we had much higher turnover, and we're now sort of more than replacing that, I would say, with new starters. We referenced the sickness trend data earlier. That's gradually on a downward trend, and we've included for the first time, we know, part of a fairly new service within local government called Infinistats, which gives us the ability to be able to draw comparisons, and it's good to note that we are not top of the table, and hopefully when the 31st of March 2025 results are available, that will show us much further to the right on that page, away from such esteemed organisations as Bolton Council. The next page gives our regular breakdown around absence reasons. These do not tend to change much from one year to the next, and it's no surprise that a quarter of all of our sick absence is still stress, anxiety and depression, and that sort of mirrors, I guess, the changing society in which we live, where there is a lot more mental health diagnoses. We've included a page as well around long-term absence. Again, that's following a gradual decline, whilst I would say short-term absence on the following page sort of remains more or less static. So yes, that was a very whistle-stop cook's tour of this data. Happy to take questions or any particular requests for drill down detail.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. I mean, it's always very interesting and quite thorough, this report. Mark, would you mind?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Personally, I'd like to drill into the detail, and I suspect you'll have to take it offline and come back to me on it. In particular around the stress, anxiety and depression, which is a quarter of all the reasons for absence. I'd like to know where that's concentrated in our various structures. You know, is it homes and landlords, children's services, adult social care? You know, to really get a feel for where our staff are struggling. I mean, a lot of the physical conditions you can, through the right policies, iron out, but actually it looks like there's quite a large body of staff who for some reason aren't getting the right support, and I'd like to know where they're concentrated in.
If I may, Chair, follow up on that with, I'll find the data.
And if I could, fatigue to that too. 2% of our staff are off for fatigue. I would have thought that actually was probably in the depression, but it seems to be separate. So again, is there one particular element where we're wiping our staff out? I'd like to drill into that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Really small one. I just feel like channel Comrade Eddie and ask about the wage differentials and whether that includes consultancy staff, albeit with the caveats that we've set out on the page.
Sorry, was the question agency?
About the difference in salaries.
This is all of the data on these pages is only staff who are employed directly. agency,
I
interims,
just wonder if we
contractors,
should have a reflection on that, given
Yeah.
what you said in the pay policy in the future, that we're going to sort of not include, but compare.
Oh, I need more staff, councillor, I'm afraid. I need to expand the HR team, so budget amendment required, sir.
This is not, you will know, but that's not easily gettable information then.
Well, no, and they don't tend to take so much, because if they don't work, they don't get paid. You know, because they're hourly, you know, they're paid hourly or daily, as
we talked about
agency.
different things. I mean, we did say in the pay policy that we compare where we pay consultants, etc., in our wage bill, in our 1 to 10 ratios, and we're not including in our monitoring.
No, we're not.
So we should.
So we're only including agency, interims, etc. That's only in the pay policy statement. I can't include them in this date because they're not. We don't collect data on them. We're not the employer.
Yeah, but we know how much we pay, surely.
We do, but this doesn't. I mean, do you mean this particular page here?
But basically, we said the pay policy. We'll have a look at where we are. Also, the 1 to 10 ratios. We will look at our internal things absolutely, but we also will keep an eye on. I'm summarising the appendix we put in the pay policy. Keep an eye on our spend on excessive consultancy, interim pay, and we should be monitoring that. I think as a result of our pay policy. And it's not in this.
I can't monitor it in here because we don't collect them. So this report comes from a system which only contains
that's
the data
fine.
Of
employed staff.
Employed staff.
We're going to be able to monitor how much we're spending on interim.
My current position, Chair, is that should be monitored through our annual look at the pay policy statement, where we will, you know, that data gathering, it's a manual exercise.
Yeah, that's all.
So yes, it's
do it, and have you got it in track?
Yeah, so you know, unless members wish it to be more often than annual, but that will have a resource implication.
Okay, thanks. Jerome, did you want to come in and ask?
Yes, please. I mean, it looks like there's been some kind of good work on managing sickness, and I kind of wonder whether there's kind of return to work interviews as standard and what kind of follow-up there is. So it'd be good to hear that. It would be good to know as well where the employment growth has been by directorate, and employment growth by salary band as well, and perhaps just a little bit of, you know, a bit of verbal explanation of where have these recruitments been taking place, just here would be useful. And then I'm curious on the salary banding, what percentage additional would be allocated for pension. So I mean, when we look at those salary bands, we look at an extra 15% of pension cost.
So at the current valuation of the fund, we're paying 23% employer contributions.
Okay. And is there employee? Okay, so it's 23%.
23 for the employer,
on
and
top
it's a
of
sliding scale for the employees between, I think, 5% and.
But that will come off their gross salary figures, yeah. So we need to add an extra 23% onto those stated salary figures to incorporate pension costs.
Correct. Well, probably 30% if you include employers' NI contributions.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Joss?
Just want to pick up on what Tim was saying, really. I mean, this has been an ongoing issue for a number of years. The issue of the cost, the ratio of 1 to 10, because it's on a bell curve, isn't it? We've got a number of people who used to be employed by Bristol City Council, who work for Bristol Waste, who doing the cleaning and things like that, so they'll be at one end of the scale. And then we obviously have employed a number of directors in interim posts, and they don't appear either. So they're on either end of the bell curve. And it does give us a very, very skewed picture. And I know that this is something that comes up at annual full council, and it's mentioned that we need to be taking these figures into consideration, and it needs to, because it's not representation at the moment. It's completely skewed. I mean, it's data in there. It's easy to change, but we are leaving out a significant cohort.
Yeah, can I just come in? I think the position has improved. So we had that appendix with the report this year that outlined the pay, and I think it is fair enough for officers to say, look, we could do this on a more regular basis to give you that information, but it's got a resource implication. And I personally think it's fine that we get that information on an annual basis and we can see it over a year. And I guess we'll know also, like in terms of the top of the pay scale, we'll know that there's interims in place in certain roles.
But it's not an honest reflection, that's the issue. I think that's the issue for members of the public. It's actually not an honest picture that people are seeing in the data and the papers.
Well,
and that's the issue.
What, in terms of this today? Or
in terms of
the pay policy statement?
The pay policy in terms of interims.
I think you're right in saying like this regular update we get probably doesn't reflect that, but the new annual pay policy report, I think that does reflect it well now. And like I say, we could have it on a more regular basis, but obviously there's a resource implication to that, and I think that's a fair enough response. Steph,
I just wanted to add, so the pay policy statement that's just been sent off from full council is different for this year. So obviously we've had that feedback in previous years about that figure not being included. So what we did for the papers that came through December HR committee were to actually create a whole appendix and feature not only that calculation for on-payroll staff, but also to include the cost of interim. So we actually showed the ratios for both. And we had a full appendix that explained... Here in flying colours. It explained our sort of checks and balances before recruiting interim. So yeah, we have for the first time this year put that information into that pay policy statement.
I mean, because this is a public document, maybe you just need a line that says that this doesn't consider interims that will be picked up in the annual report.
It seems we should have had a round of speeches on that.
Yeah, we should have had a debate on it, shouldn't we? All right, Zoe, did you make a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to take a step back to the whole sickness side of things. I know we've kind of moved on since then, but I think it is important to note that what we're experiencing when it comes to mental health is not isolated to Bristol City Council. This is an issue that employers all over the world are facing following the pandemic, and I don't think there's ever going to be a quick fix to dealing with this. I think, employers all over the world are thinking, what if we do this, what if we do this, trying to find a way to deal with it. And I think actually the kind of mindset that we need to shift to is people are just fatigued and depressed and anxious following a global catastrophe that we experienced. And instead of, trying to get people to go back to the way they were prior to it, we need to perhaps understand that this is just the way that life is for many people now. It's not about curing people or getting back to the normalcy we had before. It's about finding out what our new normal is. I'm not sure if other people think that's fair to say.
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point there. Go on.
Well, as a counter to what you just said, if you look at the world that we're living in now, and especially the message that's coming from America and this message that's coming from our own government here, that whole idea of the Ovington window is actually now shifting. And you can see in the media, I read an article the other day, there's a lot of things about over-prescribing, over-identifying. There was a thing about some statistic about, I can't remember the exact dates, but it said 20, 30 years ago, 1 in 3,500 people were diagnosed with autism, and now it's 1 in 36 or something. Things are shifting. So I do think in a way that we need to consider how we are going to perform in a world where things are really changing, and this anti-woke culture that is being put forward, we're all going to be influenced by it. And I am sort of shocked to hear already how the rhetoric in this country is already shifting because of what we're getting out of America. And I think we need to have a viewpoint on that. We need, as an organisation, to understand where do we stand. And that's a debate to be had.
Okay, probably not for the HR committee then.
Oh, I think we'll take another hour. Let's give ourselves another hour.
I'm sure you and I could talk about it for hours.
But it is something that our policy committees, our policy chairs need to be aware of it.
Okay, I've got a question myself actually. So obviously, when we class a long-term absence as greater than 4 weeks, which actually I think is quite a short time, really. So what I would be interested in, who have we got out on really long-term sick, and how are we supporting them back into work, or how obviously we've got sort of ill health retirement procedures and things like that. So I think it's at the other end of that scale I'd be interested in, especially around the stress, the mental health issues. Could we be offering additional support to those individuals to get them back? Whether that, I know we've got a new occupational health provider, but is there stuff on top of that we could be doing? And also with like the musculoskeletal stuff, would we provide like a physio for somebody that's off with that kind of injury? So obviously the NHS waiting lists are very long at the moment, but if we could pay for a bit of physio for somebody to get them back sooner, obviously that would have a cost saving for us. So I just wonder what we're doing at that end of the scale for really long-term absences.
We do that, Councillor, in terms of referrals to physio where it's appropriate to do so. We'll certainly reflect on all the points that have been made on this presentation and look to bring back some further details, either circulated amongst members or a formal report at the next meeting, and we'll have a think about how we might define very long term.
Yeah, thanks for that, Zoe.
I think it's just worth noting that as much as I'm very happy that we've got a new occupational health provider, the actual purpose of occupational health is not to determine whether someone is disabled or isn't disabled, or to tell them what their best treatment is going to be. It's simply that they're simply there to provide an unbiased neutral third party to confirm what reasonable adjustments they ask for as being reasonable. That's pretty much the role of occupational health. They're not really there to support employees beyond that. So if you're looking for someone to regularly check in with, to be like, this is working, this isn't working, that's not what occupational health does. They are there to provide evidence to an employer that reasonable adjustments are necessary.
Okay. Thanks, Zoe.
Thank you, Zoe. I couldn't have said it better myself. But we have done loads of work on reasonable adjustments, and now the first person who speaks to is the person who needs the adjustment. I was just going to say, things with work-related stress, for instance, absences. I'm going back to my colleague in libraries again. We had a level 2 sickness meeting with her the other week, but we have to go right down the line to the level 3 before we can put her into redeployment. That seems to me to be just keeping her out of work for longer. We should be able to, if she's saying, I can't go back to life because I want to go into redeployment, she knows the risks of if nothing in 12 weeks she's out, she has no job, she knows that. She's happy to take that risk, but we can't put her into redeployment until she's hit a level 3, which I just think just keeps her out even longer. Just an observation, maybe we could be looking at redeploying people a lot sooner than we do, perhaps.
Okay, thanks for that. Any final comments on this item before I move on? No? Okay, well thanks for that. It's always one of the highlights of the meeting, isn't it? The HR dashboard. So now we've got a verbal update on the sort of senior recruitment position at the moment. So there's some vacancies and some new positions that are being created as well. That Steph's going to give us an update on.
Thank you. So there is, this is your final paper in your pack. It's a report for information, update on senior leadership recruitment. So it's just to explain that having reviewed the current senior leadership structure, the Chief Executive has put plans in place to move away from some current interim arrangements to recruit to 2 new permanent roles, which are in the adults and children's area. As I say, they designed to replace interim roles. Both of those directorates have very large-scale transformation work that's required over the coming years. And both those departments have had a significant level of investment in the budget to deliver that transformation. So the idea of creating those permanent roles is to give that additional leadership and capacity to drive forward that transformation work. So HR Committee have already signed off the terms and conditions for chief officers in a previous meeting, and obviously the recruitment process will follow our usual procedures, and roles will be recruited via selection committees as normal.
Okay, thanks for that. Any questions on those 2 roles? No, and There's also an update on the executive director issue with
So in
housing
December,
and,
we also talked about some other recruitment. So we have live recruitment underway at the moment for Executive Director of Growth and Regeneration and Executive Director of Housing. We weren't able to appoint through permanent channels, so we are out to recruit for an interim, unfortunately, but just to be able to give us that capacity and leadership to set up that new housing department until we can go out again for a permanent Executive Director of Housing, and the interviews for interims next week.
Okay, thanks. Any questions or comments? No. I mean, I would say like the general trend over the years has been to try and reduce senior management costs, and obviously these are 2 new roles, but they're kind of an invest to save project. So it's just making sure that they're delivering the savings, because obviously it's increasing that top level of the top, the structure there against sort of the recent trends. It's just making sure that actually they deliver on those transformation projects as well, and they're properly performance managed.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Anybody else? No? All right. Well, that's the end of the meeting. So thank you for your patience today, and we'll get a bigger room for the next meeting. So apologies about that.